Today we're going to do a basic on light meter usage specific to the studio this time. And this is my basic setup. Here's Honker, my subject. He's good because he's got a nice big nose so we can see the direction of light when we setting up our lights. We have a radio trigger instead of wires like we did in the old days, so I can set off the lights whenever I want. And the most important tool is our light meter. This is an incident light meter that does ambient incident metering and as a flash meter, an essential tool in the studio. This particular one is the flash meter by Sekonic. It's the L358, very popular and a reasonably priced meter. What's cool about this meter is it has a hemisphere that with a twist of the knob goes in and out. Very handy. We use the hemisphere out, pointed at the camera to measure the cumulative effect of our lights. Hemisphere mimics the human face, so it gives us an accurate reading of how the lighting is going to look on a human face when we measure it thusly. When we put it in, it becomes a flat for measuring individual lights. So you can measure just the lights, the light coming from a particular source, which is, again, very handy in the studio. I usually start with a background. One of the first things I do is when I'm setting up my background lights is I want to make sure they do not hit my subject. I just want them in the background. So I'll rotate it over until we see it on the subject, and then I rotate it back so it just is no longer on the subject, and will still give me that. I'm feathering it across the background. If I'm running two lights, I'll do the same thing with the other light. Run it over till I see it hit the subject, and then run back. So they're both feathering across the background. Then we'll meter our background. I got the hemisphere out because we're measuring both lights. And I'll tend to go across the background. We got F11, which is good. Got F10 is starting to drop off, which is good. And we've got F9.5 over there. We're good. So that's how I check the background lighting. With this particular background, because it has a hot center, I'm using two lights on it to evenly light it. So that'll be represented, our final image will represent it as it appears. If I'm running a background that is a homogeneous tone with no light center, then I will often use one light in the center to create a lighter center. So we got our background set. Next thing I'll check is the hair light. Up here we have the hair light. We have our subject also about 5.5 feet from the background. Again, so I can get that zone where there's no light spilling on the subject with any of the lights. And I also don't want the hair light spilling on the background. So about 5.5 feet out works great for me. I'm aiming it right to the subject, pointing slightly towards the camera, you'll notice, which is fine because the camera's not going to pick it up. Measure that with the flat again, so I want to see what that light's doing. And we got F10 right now, and that's fine for Honker. Honker doesn't need much hair light because he's so bright. If I'm running a person with dark hair, I might run this up to F11, and the lighter their hair, the less hair light I'll need. So this is a strip light, we call this. It's a 9 by 24 inch. Does a great job on individuals or groups because it fans out really nicely. Put the hemisphere back out, and we will now measure the main light, pointing at the camera again. And we have F11, looking great. The next thing we'll do is bring in our reflector. And I'm usually using a reflector with most subjects. Placed about there. I'll make sure that it's not blocking this background light over here. Kathy placed that just right. And we can check this. It's usually a matter of taste where you want it. It's going to give me usually about 5.6 with a soft white reflector. So those are the basics. What changes is how we light the background. Different backgrounds require more or less light depending on what you're doing. Anything else, the hair light, like I said, I already explained how that would change. Main light would change in position based on the group size or individual or how artistic we want to get. If we want to get real edgy, we might bring the light back to 90 degrees and create almost a split light on people's faces. We'll talk more about lighting patterns in the future, but that's some of the basics for today. Try it out, and if you're just starting studio photography and don't have a light meter, do get one so you can precisely set these up, because we're after repeatability in the studio. And if you don't know your numbers, you can't repeat them.